Hello and welcome everyone to the ANZ Transactive Global Webinar Training Series. My name is James Brown and I'm the Head of Market Management in Transaction Banking here at ANZ. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming you to our second session in the series, which will focus on new users to ANZ Transactive Global. But before we kick off, I would like to acknowledge that I am joining you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and also acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands on which all of you are joining from today. And I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. At ANZ, we understand that digital banking tools such as ANZ Transactive Global are a critical part of our clients' overall banking experience. And as we continue to deliver new features and improve our functionality, it is important that we provide you, our clients, with the resources to enable you to unlock the full potential that ANZ Transactive Global has to offer across its full suite of features, including payments, reporting, loans, trade finance, commercial credit cards, data insights, and FX, all together in a true omni-channel experience. Today, James and Sonali will take us through some great tips and demonstrations for new users to ANZ Transactive Global. If you have any queries as we go, please pop them in the Q&A chat and we will respond throughout the session. We're really keen to make it an interactive session. And post the session, we'll provide access to the recording and also a link to additional resources. So please feel free to share among your colleagues. And if you enjoyed this session, remember, we'll be taking a short break over the Christmas period, but we will be back in January and February with a further 4 sessions covering a range of topics. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to James to get us started. Thanks, James.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon all, and thank you for taking the time. In this session, we'll be showing a demonstration of ANZ Transactive at a high level. We'll be looking at 4 sections: basic user setup and reporting, administration, payments, and then help and contact. Note, I will be switching between a live and demo environment, so I can show you multiple situations in ANZ Transactive. As mentioned, there is a Q&A open in the chat, so please put any questions in there during the demonstration. If you'd like to see a section of Transactive again, or you'd like me to go into more detail about something you've seen during the demonstration, please put that in the chat and my colleague Sonali will let me know after each section. We have booked this for an hour, but it may not go along depending on the questions. Please feel free to log into ANZ Transactive if you can, and you can follow along with what I'm doing. So now I'll move over to my full screen content. Okay, so we're starting here on the user login stage where we can put in our user IDs. Please note that your user ID is not case sensitive. And we'll start our login. So first we have our login method. Now there are 3 ways to log in to ANZ Transactive, depending on the access that you have. First is a password user. Normally this is a company managed user where the user has been set up by your administrators. The user's password can also be reset by those administrators as well. Next, we have a token holder or a device holder. These users are what are called bank managed and have a physical device as well as a password to log into ANZ Transactive, and they'll also use that device to do approvals of payments. Lastly, we have ANZ Digital Key. So these are similar to token holders, but instead of having a physical token, they have an app on their phone that they log in with. So they'll put in their password and then use their app to log in. If you don't have ANZ Digital Key set up and you are using a device, please speak to your account manager and they'll be able to set this up for you. Also note, token and digital key holders have the ability to reset their password themselves through the forgot password and change password options. And if you do block your token, you have the ability to unblock. Please also note that this password is purely for you and should not be shared with anyone, including people in your own company. And ANZ will never ask you for this password. So we'll now log in. Get my one-time password from my device. and log on. So with logging into ANZ Transactive, it takes me to my landing page where we have widgets that I've set up on what we call a workspace. These can all be moved around and resized. And note, by doing this, it only affects your login and no one else's. You also can remove them if they're no longer required. If you'd like to add any extra workspaces, you can do this by add to workspace and select the widget that you want. If you'd like to know information about the widget, you can click the information and it will let you know. If you would like to add it, you just click on it and it will appear. The content within these can also be changed. So looking under favorite accounts, you can add accounts that you're going to use most frequently. You select the accounts and then they'll appear with the balance of those accounts. Same with things like favorite reports. You can add favorite reports. There are 4 here that are set by ANZ that are most used, but you also can set up your own reports and add them here. So taking a look at our favorite accounts, you can see I have a ledger balance here, which is the default. So a ledger balance includes cleared and uncleared funds. By clicking this cog here in the settings, you can get it to show your available balance as well. So that way you can see only the cleared funds that are available in your accounts. Also from this favorite account screen, you can jump straight into account transactions by clicking on the account number, and it will show you the account activity. It automatically goes to a view of today. You do have the option to change that to previous month, month to yesterday, or you can put in a date range. If I look at previous month, there's only one transaction. I can click on that transaction to get further details. You can also scroll across and we have an option here for voucher image. If there is a deposit slip or a check, it will say yes under voucher image and you'll be able to view that. From this screen as well, you can also pull a report on this account by clicking the reports and select which account you would like, which report you would like. So if I wanted an account statement on this account, I can choose the format, decide if I want to group transactions or exclude the account balance. I can give it a name and a description, and I can show the data for. It will automatically be what I chose here, but you can change that and then click submit, and it will download and open a PDF. You also have a balance summary tab and a returned items. Now, if at any point you would like to go back to the home page from here, you can just click the ANZ logo and it will take you back. So that's the landing page. Now looking at reporting, so you can get your reports from here straight away, or you can go into the report center. In the report center, you have those favorite reports that I showed earlier. You also can select a new report. First, you choose if you'd like an admin report, a balance and transaction report, or a payments report. Then you can select your type and format. Once you've chosen those, you can put in the name and then run. Moving down the list, we also have scheduled reports. So these are reports that if you would like them to be emailed to you on a daily, weekly, fortnightly, or monthly basis, you can add a new scheduled report in here and it will email it to you on the specified time. Note that these emails that come through are password protected and the password is chosen by yourself, which I'll show you later in the demonstration under your name here. Also note that scheduled reports can only go to your email address registered against your name and cannot go to any other ones. And download reports, it's just a list of reports that you've downloaded today or yesterday, week to date, and so on. Okay, and I'll click back on the ANZ logo to get back to the home screen. So that's the first segment on the home screen as well as reporting. Sonali, is there any questions or any need to demonstrate anything further?
No questions at this stage, James.
Excellent, thank you. So the next section we're going to move into is administration. So some of you might not have this option on ANZ Transactive, as this is only available for users with the ANZ given permission of admin. So starting at the bottom and working our way up, we have downloaded reports. So these are admin specific reports that have been downloaded, such as things like user detail reports or login reports, etc. Moving up to other settings. So in other settings is where we have our permissions. Things changed in here affect the Transactive site as a whole. So starting at the bottom, we have what's called our confidential data groups. Confidential data groups are if you'd like to add extra security onto payments. So although we can differentiate between international payments and domestic payments, also payroll, what this allows you to do is actually hide a specific payment itself. For example, you may have a standard payroll that your finance team is able to see. And then you also might have an executive payroll, which can only be shown to certain people who have access to ANZ Transactive. So you would create an executive payroll data group, and you would assign it to those users and to that payment itself. Moving up, we have authorization panels. So an authorization panel is if you would want to set up more than your standard 2 approvers, or if you want a different amount of approvers for different payment amounts. For instance, 1 approver for up to $10,000, 2 approvers for up to $100,000, or 3 approvers for any payments over $100,000. Lastly, we'll look at our division settings. So division settings is where you assign your payment approval rules. So starting in the division, details, we have our product settings, and we have some options here for adding extra security on things like creating a payee list or a template. So if I were to tick this box, what I'm saying is that any user that logs in and creates a beneficiary in my payee list takes a second approver to approve it. The same goes if a user were to create a template, it will require a second approver if I were to tick that box. The 2 lower options are for payments that have already been created and whether or not you allow users to make changes to the beneficiaries. For example, if you were to upload an ABA file into ANZ Transactive, after it's been uploaded, do you allow for a user to go in and modify the beneficiaries? If this is ticked, it means that no one is able to be modified, and if the payment was wrong, it would have to be deleted and re-uploaded. Scrolling down to the authorization matrix, is where you have the ability to actually change your authorization model. For instance, transfers, you might want to make it just anyone to authorize. And for domestic credit payments, you can keep it as any 2, but you might want a different rule for your payroll payments. Perhaps your payroll would rather run off a panel and you'll use the panel that you'd set up earlier. Note any changes that you make in here do require a second admin to approve it. Once you've made the change, it will go into a pending approval status, and the second admin will be able to log in, click on that, and approve. There is also an audit trail that shows what has been changed that they can look at before approving. Note, before it's approved, Transactive will work just how it was before making the change. Moving up to account group management. So account group management is generally for customers that have a large amount of accounts that you'd like to group together. For instance, if you had 50 accounts and 10 of them were payroll accounts, you could go new, give it a group name and a group description, and then add your accounts that you'd like to put into it. The advantage of creating an account group is when you create users or modify your users, instead of linking them to one account at a time, you can just link the user to an account group that you have created. Next, we have account management. It's essentially a way for you to look at what entitlements your accounts have, and also to change the short name of your accounts. You'll note I've got 2 accounts here, both with the exact same name. So we can go into the account. We can see the entitlements that this account has, and we can edit and we can change the name. Now, by changing the account name, this will only change it on ANZ Transactive and will not change any of the backend systems that ANZ has, and will not change the name on your e-statements that come through ANZ Transactive. It's purely for a way for your staff to recognise which account is which. Okay, moving up to role management. So essentially, role management are the roles that are available for you to give your users on ANZ Transactive. You have the system roles here, which are created by ANZ, and you'll find will cover 95% of your needs. But you do have the option to create new roles and specific roles for users by just clicking New. And then ticking the boxes of what you would allow them to do. For instance, if this user was only allowed to do international payments, then you could click that and they won't have access to do any other payment type. Note the system roles that ANZ have created cannot be changed, but they can be used to give to your users. Okay, moving on to user management. So in user management is where you can see all the people that have access to your ANZ Transactive site, their user IDs, their details, and whether or not they are password users or security device holders. In here, you also have the ability to make changes to their access. So if we click on myself, we'll be able to see my details as well as my user permissions. By clicking edit, I have the ability to change the role that I control. These other roles that I cannot change, like customer admin, are the ones that are supplied by ANZ at the time of setting up the user. So within the role itself, you can click in and you can change the permissions for this user. For instance, if you wanted to say instead of seeing all accounts for domestic payments, they can only see selected accounts. For instance, just this one. Or you can add an account group as shown earlier. In here also, you can decide if this user is allowed to see payroll or not see payroll and standard payments. And you also have approval discretions to how much they're allowed to approve. For instance, I wouldn't be able to approve any payment that would be over $11. Again, any change that's happened in here requires a second admin to log in and then approve the change. They'll also see an audit trail of the change that has been made and what has been changed. And lastly, in administration, we'll move up to creating a user. So creating a user is when you need to create a password user, so someone who does not need a device. Generally, these are users who just have the ability to create payments and do reporting. So if we create the new user, you put in all the required details, email address, and it will automatically come up with a user ID for that user, and you select an address that's associated to your company. It doesn't need to be the personal address. And then you have the option to either copy permissions from another user or add a new permission. If I click add a new permission and we select create role, which if I put my mouse over the description, it states payment and template create and account reporting. So as soon as I select that, it now takes me into the permissions and says which accounts am I allowed to create payments on. Also, am I allowed to see any confidential data groups that were mentioned earlier? And which accounts can I do balance and transaction reporting on? You'll note the approval discretions are not here because I chose the create role who cannot approve payments. Had I created this user, they would then go into a awaiting approval status or pending approval for another admin to then log in and approve the user. Once approved, a temporary password will display on the screen to be handed to that new user, and that new user will then have to change it to a password of their pick. So that's the conclusion of the administration segment. Sonali, is there any questions or anything for me to go back over?
James, we've got one question.
Yes.
Can you show us how to create a separate payroll and standard payment?
So in payment creation, or how for the user to determine whether they're allowed to see a payroll or non-payroll? I believe it's in payments, which I'll be jumping to now.
Yes.
And I'll show the difference between the two. Not a problem at all. So jumping straight into payments, again, I'll start at the bottom and work my way up. So file import summary, any files that have been imported into ANZ Transactive, so your payroll files, will appear in here. I'll jump over to a demo site to show you, and it lets you know the number of transactions in that, how many of them were valid, if any of them need repair, or if any were rejected. So it's a great way to find out that your file was successful and that all transactions had uploaded correctly. Moving up, we're up to templates. So this is essentially where you create templates. The difference between templates and payee lists is a template is where you're going to put in your funding details, the full beneficiary details, and the payment type. So for instance, you take a look into this one, we can see it's got a template name description. Our beneficiaries are in here as well. And then direct from here, I can create a payment. Payee list next. This is essentially just your address book for your beneficiary details. So if I were to click new, you'll put in your beneficiary name, beneficiary ID. So again, this is just for you to locate it. Email address is very handy. With an email address, it means when you create a payment using this beneficiary, you can choose to send them a remittance advice after the payment. Okay, moving up to international payment tracking. So when you make international payments, we now have the ability to track them with Swift GPI-enabled banks. What this means is, for an example, if you've sent a payment to a GPI-enabled bank, you'll be able to live follow the payment to ensure it makes it to its destination. And it will give you all the timings and how long it takes to get there. Next, we have past payments. So simple as a way for you to search any past payment that you've made. Current payments. So on current payments is essentially all your payments that are pending approval that have been completed, although if completed, they will only sit on here for 30 days. And then move into past payments, all your draft, any payments that need rate or need repair, and any that are pending approval. Note, you can move these around. You can also remove some of the options if you don't want them. And you can also group them for things like payments for my approval or any payments that need repair. Also, you'll note some of them have this exclamation point. What this shows you is any warning about the payment. For instance, this may be a duplicate payment. Or we look on, we've got this one here. This payment has been modified since it was entered. And lastly, we'll look at creating a payment. And this is where you can see the difference as well for that question between a salary and a standard payment. So first off, we have making payments by creation method. One, you can use a payment template, which we looked at before. So it takes the templates that have been approved out of there. You can use a payment file, so like an ABA file, and upload. Now, in an ABA file, there is a code in there which says if it's a payroll or not a payroll. And you can speak to your account manager about that, but that's how ANZ will determine it to be a payroll or standard. It's based on the file itself and the code inside. And you can also use a past payment as a template for a new payment. Or if you were creating one from scratch, you can select account transfer, which is transferring between your accounts, and that can happen 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and that's instant. Domestic payment, which is just standard domestic payment, AUD to AUD. International payment, a domestic salary payment. If you had to make a one-off payroll payment, you would select this, and that's another way that ANZ would know that you are creating a payroll payment. So it means that if you didn't have payroll ticked, you wouldn't see it. Same with if you used a payroll file with that code in it, unless you had payroll ticked in your profile, you wouldn't see it. And BPay. So we'll take a look at a domestic payment. So we just select my account number, and then we've got three options for a domestic payment. First one is your direct entry or DE payment, which is your standard domestic payment. RTGS, which is real-time gross settlement. So this is a instant payment that goes over the SWIFT network. And the cutoff time for those is a lot shorter than here. It's only 4 p.m. for RTGS, and direct entries are 7:30, but we recommend always to put them in before 6. And then we have OSCO payment. OSCO payment is an instant payment that can be done again. There is no cutoff time, and it can be done 365 days a year at any time of the day. Note, it has to go to an OSCO enabled bank. And there is currently a daily OSCO limit that is defaulted at 50,000. If that were to ever need to change, you can speak to your account manager. So we'll look at a direct entry payment. So starting at value date, you can future date your payments. If you future date your payment, you run through all the approvals, and it will just sit in your current payment screen until it's ready to go. Note, the late cutoff time is 7:30. But there is a chance that there may be a late lodgement fee by doing it any time after 6. So just bear that in mind. So you put in your payment name. And this payment name is purely for your reference, so you're able to find the payment later. Statement narrative is what will appear on your statement. And then the payment reference is like an invoice number. This will go with the payment to your beneficiary. Here we have that confidential data group if you need to hide it. And then we have our beneficiary details. So you can add multiple beneficiaries if need be, or they can be removed. And so clicking the beneficiary name, it comes with a drop down. So it will immediately show the ones that are in my payee list, or if you start with the letter, it will bring up beneficiaries that you have saved. So we'll select the ABC code. So it comes up with the account. I can change this reference if I need to. I can also click on the beneficiary details here. So it comes up with the details and the bank details. Also, if I choose to, I can add some remittance information and invoice details, which I can then email. If you've loaded the email in the payee list, it'll be there already, or you can add it in yourself. And then you review and submit the payment. Once the payment is submitted, it will sit in current payments, awaiting for your approval rules. Next, we'll take a quick look at an international payment. Again, very similar details. You select your account, payee name, and reference. You can choose a confidential data group, and then you can add your beneficiary. So obviously with international payments, there's a bit more details, such as SWIFT code, bank details. You can select your currency, and you can also email the beneficiary advice. You put your currency up here as well. That we'll also see our FX details down the bottom, and whether or not we're going to use a dynamic rate, which is ANZ's live rate, or if you've got a contract. The only difference with an international payment is once you've gone through the approvals, it will go into a status of needs a rate to where you can get a rate. Once you click get a rate, it will come up with a dynamic rate for you to trade on. So that is the payments section. Sonali, any questions regarding or anything that needs to be demonstrated regarding payments?
James, we've got 2 questions on payments. And we've got 1 question asking us to go back on the administration section. So we'll start on payments. The first question is, how should we use the past payment section? Which fields would be commonly used?
Yep. Okay, so starting with that, so you need the value date as mandatory. So you can select a specific date, or you can put in a date range. That's one mandatory. The other mandatory here is, now this comes up for me because I have multiple divisions, but if you only have one, that will already be loaded. So you can search by that. Obviously, always recommended that you put in any further information that you need, for instance, the account that it came out of, or the beneficiary account number, for instance. And what was the other thing there, Sonali?
So the second question was, can you show us how to use the domestic payroll payment?
Sure.
The user usually uploads an ABA file. And the question is it better to use domestic payroll payment?
Yeah, so no, ABA file is the best way to do it. Domestic salary payment is you putting all the information in yourself and not using the files. You actually have to add every single beneficiary. So it's really only used for if you need to make a small one-off payroll instead of using, if for some reason your ABA file had forgotten someone and you needed to do it immediately, you could just do it here. But with your standard payroll, you should always use the payment file. And just one thing I forgot to mention regarding our international payments. After you have made an international payment, you do have the ability to click into it, select a beneficiary, and download the MT101 if your beneficiary needs it as proof of payment. And sorry, Sonali, there was something to go back to the administration.
James, just on the MT103, we've got another question. Where can I find the MT103 button? So
yeah, as just said, yeah. So you just need to go into the completed payment in current payments. And after it's completed, you can just click into it and you select the beneficiary who needs it and just download it there.
Thank you for that. And back to the administration. Our request is, can you please show us how payroll access can be confined to certain users?
Sure. So it's either done when you create the user or if you're amending the user. So if I'll click on user management and I'll use myself as an example. So sort by name. I am. So under the user, we'll click edit. We'll edit my entitlements here by clicking that blue button. So these are my entitlements to me personally, and we have right here payment purpose. It's saying, am I allowed to see standard and payroll? Right now, yes, I'm allowed to see both. If that was turned off and we saved and approved that, any payment that had that code in the ABA file for payroll would essentially, I wouldn't know it existed. And any payment that had been done under that domestic salary, I also wouldn't be able to see it. Excellent. So we'll just jump onto the last section now, which is just looking at these top buttons up here. So first off, we have our notification bell, which lets you know any reports that have been downloaded or any messages from ANZ if you'd like to look at them again. Next, you have your name and your settings and preferences. So in here is where you can set up your date format, the time zone, how you like your decimal separators, and also this report retrieval code. So as mentioned, when in Report Center, I was talking about scheduled reports. So when the scheduled report gets emailed to you, it needs a password to open, and that's where this password is put. Now you can put any password you want in there. It can be changed at any point. And once you save that, any report that's now emailed me out of Transactive will need that code put in there. We also have a set landing page where if you wanted this to always be your landing page when you logged in, you could set it like that. Lastly, we have notifications and alerts. So here, if you'd like emails sent to you when any of these actions happen in Transactive, you can. One thing I'd note, for instance, transaction pending authorization. This won't necessarily go to you if it's just your authorization that it needs. It will go to any user that can approve payments. So just bear that in mind. So now moving over to the help section. So the help section is essentially should always be your first point of call if you were to ever have any issues or get lost in ANZ Transactive. So first we have a search bar. We have our promoted articles and further articles such as videos, how to do your account screen, administration, and so on. So if we look at our promoted articles, we have one here called Status Page Overview, which ANZ recommends that you save to your favorites. So this Status Page Overview lets you know about ANZ's products and if there are any issues with them live. So for instance, ANZ Transactive Global, you can see it's currently operational. And we can click on here and see that each section is operational. If there were any issues, you'll see it up here. Also with notifications on progress and when they're expected to be fixed. So this could save a call to the help desk. But going back to our help page. Again, you also have the search function. So if you needed to know how to create a user, you could create user. And it will come up with options with the word create in it. And here, very simply lets me know how to create a user with all the steps involved. You also have common options on the side, so other options under administration. And you can look at other options under payments. Also mobile, if you haven't downloaded ANZ Transactive mobile app, we recommend that you download it. It's very simple to use. And it's a great way to get reporting and approve payments. And note, if you do have ANZ digital key set up as well, you can approve payments on your phone without needing the device with you. And lastly, we'll take a look at the contact. So if you've gone through help and cannot find what you're looking for, if you click on contact, it will actually come up first with the region that you're located and what your inquiry about. So if I select Transactive Global Support and Payments, it will actually give me a one-time direct phone number and a code that will take me directly to the Transactive help desk. It avoids the need of having to go through the menu options through 133, 199. And it also identifies you, so you don't need to go through your challenge and response questions either. So we recommend that you use this instead of going through the standard help desk phone number. Now, before I log off, Sonali, is there anything or any questions that I need to demonstrate again?
Yes, James. One question is, can you show the report retrieval code again and how I would use this?
Yep. So in Report Center, we have the scheduled reports. So as mentioned, these are the reports that you can set up so they're emailed to you daily. So delivering by email. So anything that's being delivered by email to your email address has to be password protected. And that password comes from whichever password you put into your settings and preferences and your report retrieval code. Again, this can be changed whenever you need to, or if you did forget it, you could hit show and see it there. So
thanks, James. One more question.
Yes.
In the international payments, is intermediary bank relevant?
So it is something that does need to be set up by ANZ, and it's not used essentially at time of setup, your account manager would have had a conversation with you about whether or not it's something that you use. It's generally not used because most payments are just from A to B. But if it is something that is set up for you, it is an option. And if it's not set up and you need it, you just need to have that discussion with your account manager and ANZ can turn it on for you. Excellent. Are there any more questions before I log off from the screen?
Looks like that's it for the moment.
Excellent. So please ensure when you are done with Transactive that you click log off. And now I'll just switch to Sonali if there are any Q&As from the poll EV that was sent.
We do. Thanks, James. So the question is, I'm a new user and I can't see the accounts menu. How do I fix this? The answer is, so this will be due to the roles that's assigned to your profile. So you'll need to speak to your Transactive Global Administrator to have your profile checked and ensure that you do have the right permissions. And that's it. That's all the questions we've got.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sonali. And I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance today. As mentioned, your ANZ representative will share the recording of this presentation, along with some further information from today's session. So thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.